Thanks, Gary. It's always good to be here because you see kids learning excitedly, and I hope that's what we're all about, ultimately. Welcome to the 17th. I don't believe it's been that many. The last one of this year, 17th McKee Learning Lunch. It's appropriate for the McKee name to be attached to it because the McKees were generous supporters of the building of this center. This particular one we have planned carefully. Every one of you were very carefully selected because of the topic. You may or may not have surmised what the topic name, Chattanooga at the Crossroads, meant. And it may mean different things to different people, which is also part of the operation that we hope to enjoy today. Before we do anything, we have an assignment. This is school. You've got an assigned seat, right? Right. And on the table in front of you is a 3x5 card. And before we do anything else, you have an assignment. Take that pencil or pen, anything you want to use, and write a question on that card. A question that is generated by the title, Chattanooga at the Crossroads. Some question that you have that you don't have an answer to. We may or may not address it, but we will actually collect the questions and use it as part of our generation of further information. So, if you would do that now and just leave it on the table, we'll pick it up later. That's your first assignment. Do that quickly. As I tell my students, don't think about it, just write down the question. Okay? Wonderful. I could see the brain work. And you could hear it in the what? Silence. So thank you for that. Now we get to the exciting, engaging, participatory part of why you're here. I'm honored that this particular learning lunch is being co-sponsored by our city newspaper. It's the first time we've had that privilege. We've been reported on occasion, but this time the topic is of such interest that the newspaper has gladly actually joined us in the discussion. And I'm going to let Joan McLean introduce that idea and then introduce our speaker. Joan is the project editor of the Times Free Press. Joan McLean.
So I'm here because several years ago I decided to write about poverty. Years later, I've learned a lot about that. I've learned that there's a lot I don't know. I've learned a lot about the history of our city. And almost everyone in this room has helped me tell that story. And I just had a baby, so I might get emotional saying that, but it really has been difficult. Y'all have all helped me tell that story. And this story is ongoing. And Chattanooga is at a crucial moment right now where so much is happening and so much is being decided behind the scenes and in front of the public. And y'all are all a part of that, informally and formally. And I care about what y'all have to say at this moment in time about this issue, about poverty, education, economic mobility, growth, all of these issues that we're talking about widely, and that we're really passionate about covering in the paper. And we're also passionate about making sure that every voice is heard, because a lot of this can happen without the most vulnerable population having a voice. And so many of you guys are at the crossroads of, in organizations, you touch people that are without and you touch people that are with. You're bridgers. And so that's another reason why you're here. Because y'all play a crucial role in the community, whether you're at the top of an organization, at the middle, or the bottom. And some of this y'all are just doing in your personal life, and that's why I've gotten to know you. But I also want to introduce our speaker today, which is Elanor Cooper. When I wrote about poverty and we published the Poverty Puzzle, she came to me afterwards and she had all these boxes. I mean, just like tons of documents and boxes, videos, everything. And she was like, I think there's more to this story. And I think you need to go backwards and look at how we got here. And so that's what I did. And that's why she's gonna be walking us through this next part. She was at the center of the action. She's one of the few people, I'm not trying to say this to make her sound old, because she's vibrant and young. But she is one of the few people who can tell us what really happened. And as a journalist, I care about firsthand, people that can give firsthand accounts. And so, I mean, she was head of the Community Outreach Division of the Moxie Men Task Force, which really was the launching point for the response. And then she headed Chattanooga Venture, which was the home for Vision 2000, which is what made Chattanooga famous nationally for community engagement. Now, if you've read the series, you know how that ended, but there's still a lot to talk about with that. So anyway, I'm gonna give it over to Elanor. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you for doing what you're doing and for speaking out on these issues. Oh, and let me just say one more thing. This is all going to be reported in tomorrow's paper, so don't say anything that you don't want everybody to,
So relax. Thank you, Joan, and thank you, Jim, and thank you, Greg, our planning team. So, well, I'm going to have fun with this. I am so excited about who is in this room, and I'm eager to hear what you all come up with, which we're going to do by the end of this time, an hour and a half, we're going to come up with stuff. I apologize for my voice. I don't know what happened. I don't have a cold. I'm not stepped up. But I just have a deep voice, so just think of me as a little bankhead. I also have a slightly faulty changer. It works when it wants to, and that's kind of how we all are, so we're going to go with it. I gotta get the right button. Is it the middle button?
It's the big button on the bottom.
Big button on the bottom. Okay, that probably will help. All right. Now, the planning team, talking about the Crossroads, we had an argument and couldn't quite decide whether to focus on the past or the future, because Crossroads implies that. And we're obviously moving towards the future, but we got there by coming from the past. And so, should we talk about the past to explain why things are the way they are, or should we look towards the future? And we couldn't decide, so I decided to ground us in the present. And I had this great experience the other day. I took a walk on a portion of the Riverwalk. It was rife with metaphors. It was just so full of metaphors. I could not believe it. So if you will just play along with me and enjoy these metaphors with me. They may be a little silly, and they may not work for you, but I think we'll have fun. Can you see? All right. Okay. I think we'll have fun. The river park itself is a metaphor, right? It's a metaphor for the vision that was, the reality that is, and where we're going. Okay. So that's how I'm using it. All right. So let's take a walk. Come walk with me. All right. I think we might see things a little differently if we take this little walk together. So where do we start? Well, you are here. Where is here? It's a little messed up, isn't it? It's a little marked over. It's a little confused. It's a little messy. We're not really sure where here is. Great metaphor for Chattanooga at the Crossroads. All right. So we're gonna set out. We don't quite know where we are, but we're gonna set out. And I just wanted to explain the Riverwalk itself. It's really exciting for me to walk on. It's like when you were a part of the vision, and I'll just share this with you. When I went to the visioning processes, I had just had a baby. And so I was pushing the baby in the stroller, and there are no sidewalks. There are no sidewalks in my neighborhood. There are no sidewalks anywhere. And where can I push the baby? I was in the street. So I thought, I want a walkway that you can push a stroller on. And the guy next to me wanted a walkway he could ride his bike on. The guy next to me, the other person wanted to walk on it, et cetera, et cetera. And look what we got. We all got our wish, you see? So when I walk on this now, I'm an old person, not yet with a wheelchair, but will be soon. I'm happy. I'm really happy. It worked. Okay, the original idea is access to the river, enhance the natural environment, acknowledge our history, and there's historical markers, encourage commerce, promote recreation. And the idea at the time was, if it's good for us who live here, it will attract others. Of course, tourism is a part of it, but not the purpose. The purpose is to be good for us who live here. Okay. So the Riverwalk worked, and you go out there on any old ordinary day, and you'll see people doing all those things. But let's look just a little closer. The vision was to have the highest standard, the highest quality walkway. There's a little bit of damage going on. It needs a little repair. Of course it would. 30 years later, it needs repair. So I'm going to use that as a metaphor that not only do the physical structures need repair, which means time, attention, and money, but also our civic infrastructure needs some looking at. Our participation structure needs some looking at, and it takes time, it takes attention, and it takes money. So let's go back to the marker. At the very beginning of the Riverwalk, there's these markers that describe the master plan. Now you probably never look at it. Has anyone ever read it? Aha, okay. Most people don't. That definitely would. All right, so that particular day, I paid special attention to it because I was on a meaningful walk. Right? And I noticed the word vision was used twice. And I thought, that's really interesting. The person who wrote this, and it had to be reviewed by committees and all that stuff, felt that was important. So let's look at a sentence where that is used. This is in the first paragraph. The long-range vision created by all segments of the community provides the highest quality public amenities, and we already saw the highest quality was beginning to deteriorate, in a park and trail system designed to knit together both existing and new economic development along this special resource, the Tennessee River. That really struck me, the vision created by all segments of the community. So that's what we're going to talk about today. What does that mean? Why did that get in here, and what do we mean by that now? I know that some of you, just looking at that, probably feel cynical about the claim that all segments of the community. So I want us to talk a little bit about that. Cynicism stems from powerlessness. People who feel empowered no longer feel cynical. But empowerment comes from releasing our creativity, working together, feeling effective. And that feeling effective comes from finding your people and co-creating together something that you feel makes a difference, where you feel good, you feel energized by that. That's where empowerment comes. So that's what we want. We want to empower our community. So now my definition of vision is an interaction between people and ideas. It's not a plan. It's not a strategic plan. It's a guiding concept. It's a guiding idea. So I love this picture of a guy who's interacting with ideas there. But so let me talk about this a little bit. Let me go back. Many cities have riverfronts. We're not unique. New York at the end of Manhattan. Washington, D.C., along the Potomac River. Portland, Oregon, famous for its riverfront. Baltimore, even Tuscaloosa, Alabama on the Black Warrior River. So riverfronts are what everybody did in the 90s and up to now. So that's no big deal. So we're proud of our riverfront, but what makes our riverfront different from all those other? Most riverfronts are created by a strategic planning process. The city and the county get together, they get their planning office to come up with a strategic plan. The strategic plan has a budget and a timeline, and it goes into effect. That's how most things get done. And we're no different. We had the city and the county and a strategic plan and a budget and a timeline, and we got it done. But there was something that made us different, that deserved that expression that we just read. So I will say it was the convergence of two things happened at the same time. Okay? The two things were this. One was the Moccasin Bend Task Force, which Joan referred to earlier. And I called it an intervention, not just a planning process. It came in a very dysfunctional community in the early 80s, when we've all heard those stories of how dysfunctional we were and how bad things were. But the way I see it is primarily we were divided. We were divided by race and class in every way. We didn't know how to communicate, function, or make decisions. All decisions were made top down. That's the industrial model. All industrial cities had that same model. We're not unique in that. The industrial model is basically you bring the right people together. The right people are the owners of industry, the old families with money, and those people who are business leaders. They come together and they make decisions about what's going to happen. So that's how the Chamber of Commerce did it. That's how Allied Arts did it. That's how most everything was run. That's an industrial model. So the Moccasin Bend Task Force broke that up. They broke that industrial model up because they truly employed public participation. They hired a consultant from Cambridge called Carl Lynch Associates from Cambridge, Massachusetts. They believed in public participation so much that they sent one of their people down to work with our people full time in getting the community involved, asking the community. So I was part of that effort to hold meetings in black churches, in schools, in neighborhood associations, public libraries. We held about 65 meetings over a couple of years, and every time the consultants would come down, we'd have a whole series of meetings. They would meet with individuals as well as groups, and then they would come back the next time and they would report what they had heard. They would show a slideshow or they would give a presentation. So over about a 3-year period, the community was getting all stirred up. You know, they were hearing these things, they were getting some ideas, they were coming, they were bringing more people in, and we were all gaining an image of what the riverfront could be. And it wasn't just Moccasin Bend, it quickly expanded to the whole 20-mile stretch from the dam to the Marion County line. Sorry, Helen, we left out Marion County, where Helen was working. Okay, so this public process, I call it an intervention because it took a dysfunctional community and it stirred it up. And we had over about, during that process, lots of conflicts arose. For example, the Native Americans, they didn't want any development on Moccasin Bend. They wanted to make it a historical site. People who lived out on Suck Creek, they didn't want public access on their land, a river walk going through there. People who lived in North Chattanooga, along the country club, homes over there, they didn't want public access along that. You know, so all these conflicts were stirred up, all these different people were coming and giving their comments, but they were hearing these ideas in the meantime. So that took about 3 years, and then I'll tell you where that went in a minute. But simultaneous with that, or kind of at the end of that, 1984, the fall of 84 into the first of 85, was held Vision 2000. By this time, terms like quality of life, public participating, those are becoming part of the culture. And Chattanooga Venture was created as an organization which had no affiliation of the past, and their first job was to create a vision for the whole community. So Vision 2000, it was the first task of Chattanooga Venture. It was a community-wide visioning process. That meant it was open to everybody. Anybody could come, but not only could anybody come, it also meant we made a huge effort to get diversity there. That might mean providing daycare, providing transportation, holding it in different places, those kind of holding it at different times of the day, etc., so that we could get diversity. And now, in today's terms, you might think it was pretty elementary, but for the time, it was pretty radical. It was very radical. Nobody had experienced that before. You were sitting in groups, like today, with people you hadn't seen before, or people who were different from you. And we were not just getting the professionals, just those who work in the city, but people who were from all parts of life. So that took about 6 months. It was in the fall, going into the next year. So, as you see, these two things dovetail together like two rivers hitting each other. And so the results of the Moxon Bend Task Force, the Riverfront Plan, hit at the same month that the results of Vision 2000 did. Now, the Riverfront Plan was just the riverfronts, one big plan. The Vision 2000 was anything in the community. So there were 34 goals that resulted from Vision 2000, and they were things like after-school programs, a spouse abuse shelters, low-income housing, revitalize the downtown, just extremely varied, and they were human needs as well as urban revitalization. And it now has the reputation for just being the urban space, but that wasn't what it was at all at the time. There were 34 goals. One of them was the river park, and it was vague. It was just a concept. It was basically reinforcing what we'd been hearing in the Moxon Bend and saying, yeah, we want that. Whatever that is, we want that. So this was the actual wording that's in quotes that came from Vision 2000, was establish a comprehensive riverfront development plan that is responsible to the natural beauty and the archaeological, industrial, and historic significance of the river. And then they had a whole list of things. And you don't see aquarium there at all, do you? Somewhere in that long list there was a little letter A, not a big letter A, just a little letter A, aquarium, history center, amphitheater, things like that. So that's where those ideas got confirmed. Okay. But a planning process had to happen. Moxon Bend Task Force took that on, and the Hubert Fry Center opened in 1989, the first part of the river park. And the idea was all 20 miles in 20 years. Okay, still, metaphor, right? Whole community, all right. Now, let's keep walking along this trail. There's a play trail. Okay. So, and I'm having my grandchild with me, so I'm real excited about this play trail. Now, this sort of seemed to be a metaphor to me. Are we connected? Is the web of our community, does it connect? Or are we just concentric circles around each other? Bear with me here. Okay. What is our community web like? Are we an interconnected web, or are we just a shadow of the web? And if we're a shadow, is it going to come back to bite us? Okay. But to be an effective web, we need to cross boundaries. Okay, we need to work with people across the boundaries, of all kinds of boundaries. And this is just an image of empowerment, of working together on something that builds the community. And by doing that, you both build your own strength, you also build the strength of the community. So, I'm going to end with this one. What's your vision of an empowered community? What kind of network? And all of you are here because you are a node in a network. You have lots of networks. Your friends, your family, your groups that you're a part of, the work that you do, etc. And so you interconnect with lots of the community. So if we put all that together, we could do an image of all that together, we'd have a very complex web. And that's what we're going to think about today. Okay, that is the end of my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Elanor. It is a pleasure to hear that historic basis for what can be. We still don't know what that is, but that's what you're going to help us think about. Now it's lunchtime, and you have a menu, so you know what you're in for. And I want to thank Southern Traditions for putting this together for us. You'll thank her even more if you finish. But before we start, you're going to get an assignment to accomplish while you eat. You eat and talk. Isn't that what we do around the table? And you'll talk about 3 questions, which are on the list that you're going to be receiving at this point. But you have 2 parts to the assignment. You need to assign a recorder. One of the 3 or 4 of you will be the recorder to actually write down the substance of what you say in response to that question. Then assign A reporter, not Joan. She has her own report to write, which you're all involved with, but a reporter for your table. The reporter doesn't have to be and should probably be someone different from the reporter, but it could be the same person. That's up to you. The reporter is going to end up at the conclusion on a panel up here to represent your table, to try to bring it all together as we discuss as a total group the ideas that you come up with. So, assign a reporter, assign a recorder, and enjoy the meal. We will dismiss you by table, and enjoy lunch. This is a kind of a free-for-all discussion, so you're all welcome to participate. But we will focus on the panel that represents you. And we will take each question and address that question, but feel free, like I could keep you from feeling free, to move into as it relates to other questions or whatever. And then the audience, if you feel that something needs to be, from the representative of your table needs to be further expanded, feel free to do that as well. So we're going to now find out what you talked about, what kind of projects you came up with, and what kind of cooperation and collaboration you feel is possible, if not probable. And let's start. We always start at that end, so I'm going to start at this end this time. And with the first question, read the question, please.
Yeah. What experience have you had where all segments of the community worked together? So we kind of did a little round robin on this, and one of the first comment was, the first thing I thought was, I'm not sure that I have. But then we kind of started digging into, okay, this dialogue about, well, where do you see things happening where you see more boundaries being crossed at least? And one example was a community discussion at Chattanooga State talking about economic development across a variety of different populations, and that was facilitated by Chat State. The second one was at Hope for the Inner City. They have an annual fundraising dinner, and just the recognition that the variety of people who show up to that sort of gathering. The Franklin McCauley desserts were brought up twice, and then the District 9 meeting. So Demetrius Kimura gets together with a number of community leaders in District 9, and it's kind of an interesting cross-section of people that's come from all sorts of backgrounds and work towards common good.
Fine, this wasn't a difficult or a big question, so we can move rapidly. Next.
Our table talked a lot about places and spaces in Chattanooga that are really organized around intentional diversity. And so everything from Unify Ed's Apex Steering Committee on dealing with school inequities, remarkably diverse, dealing with minority business conferences with the Chamber of Commerce, the board of the United Way, or even working in communities here. The intentional diversity really makes an impact.
All right, so I'm going to rip the Band-Aid, and our group said that while all those things are happening, the key word here for us was all, and there isn't a place in Chattanooga in the 13 years that I've been here and the collective years that some of my team members have been here where I've seen all segments of any part of this community come together on any particular effort ever.
Thank you.
We had a very similar conversation at our table, and looked at it more as many segments of the community, but then we also kind of talked about the idea of community, and is that within your personal community, the community as a whole, at large. We could get into like a bunch of really specific sociological terms of that. I mean, I think this is the community as an entire city, but even within our own personal interactions, there weren't segments of all the community, but there were large segments, which kind of led us to look at the social capital aspect of things, like how people can really be connected better, even in an exercise like this. we've got different groups of people at different tables, and like there's been a few people get up and go talk to another table, but how many of us in this room that don't know each other could benefit from connecting or knowing what the other table, has going on, even if it doesn't necessarily pertain to what something that we're doing.
So I had it really pretty easy because I was at the table with Unify Ed at UTC that basically they're all about stakeholder engagement and really getting out there across all segments of the community, and I think they're great examples of it. And just personally from my consulting practice, stakeholder engagement is so critical and so challenging. So, and my kind of personal insight on it was that, I've been here since the bad old days and have been involved in a lot of things where there's kind of efforts to get various segments of the community engaged together. And I'm not sure how much that would happen in other places. So even though maybe we're not always successful, and I think if you talk to them about UTC and Unify Ed's experiences, they'd say, we are doing our darndest, but it's challenging. I think the fact that we're trying and that there are lots of opportunities for that is interesting, important, significant.
I just have to echo some of the other panelists here that one of our first notes was that we've seen many segments of the community come together, but that word all is lacking in Chattanooga right now. Some folks at the table have said they've participated in some of the segments of the community come together in historical visioning, but not current. And there is also, they've seen private schools work with public schools and faith-based institutions and neighborhood associations to carry out neighborhood projects or just to beautify areas of the city. One that came to mind for me is the Minority Health Fair that's run by a historically black fraternity. Does someone, Dr. Holmes, do you know the name of the fraternity?
This was Chris Ramsey is the one.
Chris Ramsey organized that, and if you've ever had the chance to go there, it's amazing the members of the Chattanooga community that participate and how many members of the community they serve. I know UTC works there. I know that all kinds of nonprofits also contribute to that and make it happen, along with just the work of some really hardworking volunteers across the community.
Yes.
I just have to make a comment after listening to what you all have said, because I'm a native of Chattanooga, and of course I was on the original staff of Chattanooga Venture and went through the Vision 2000 process. But the thing that was interesting to me and what you all said is, at a time when there was more divisiveness in this community, there was more of an all when we had communities coming together than there is now, which is amazing to me. When you would think more people coming together, because at that time, it was a situation where people had a voice regardless of who they were, whether it's someone at your church, a little old lady at the church, or the richest man in the community, whether it was someone working in the community or someone in the county. There was more of an all and a reason to come together when we had more racism, more problems with companies as far as strikes were going on, more divisiveness in communities and government. We did more all than you all than what's happening now. I'm fascinated by that. And I'm glad you all will recognize it.
Well, I can't resist asking all of you a follow-up question relative to the all. It sounds like there is no opposition to that. There just has been no active, deliberate approach to it. But I'm asking, this is the question that intrigued me. Is there opposition to all? What does that look like? Anybody?
I think we've got two sides to the coin. The traditional, the way that the power structure is organized, such that people can only participate in particular ways. That's an ongoing paradigm that has not shifted well enough. And then two, I think the second most powerful thing that we often overlook is the power of disenfranchisement and the levels to which people can engage in a one-on-one basis in a very connected, powerful way. But then if you invite me to your meeting or your function, I'm exhausted on organizations. I'm disenfranchised because I know that if you ask me a question, your organization isn't going to pull through. I know that.
I mean, I've got a whole lot. Me too. I'm trying to keep it in. Keep it in.
Let it out.
So, talking about like power, I mean, there's a difference between input and power, and that's a huge problem in Chattanooga. Everybody wants input, and then you're going to put that input on the shelf, and we're not going to go back to it because decisions get made a certain way. And that happens in a lot of communities. You want to talk about diversity and lack of diversity, you look at any nonprofit board, and not just on race, but look at class. How many working class people are on a board in a nonprofit in Chattanooga? That's a major issue. And what we're talking about is power. What's it going to take for people to have a say-so over decisions that affect them here? And when it comes to working class folks, which are a majority in Chattanooga, it's not. And so that becomes a major issue when we get to the outcomes.
So ditto everything that Michael said, and so I'm pretty literal. Like, I took this sentence and I circled some things. Worked, right? So the question was, what experience have you had where all segments of the community worked together? Worked. The word worked implies that I have not only just a voice at the table, but what I'm getting ready to say is going to be an actionable item that I then will see manifesting. What I've seen is people try to bring all segments together to talk about the experience, and then the work happens over here, and the decisions are happening up here, and then I become a benefactor. When you invite me to the table, I don't want to be the meal. You invited me to dinner, but I'm what's being served up. And so when you're talking about all segments, well, I'm just saying, I mean, but when you're talking about all segments being present, we need to understand what that dynamic is. And when we're talking about power and impact and influence, until you can define those things, I need to know when I come to the table, why I'm at the table. If I'm a quota, I need you, I'm real. Tell me I'm a quota. Tell me I'm there because you needed a checkbox. If you need somebody that's gonna have a specific skill set, I need to know that. If I'm there because you know what, everybody here is upper middle class and I'm a working class person, okay, I need that. But I haven't seen where all of those people came together and it wasn't this recipient type of behavior where people came and discussed about, from an equitable standpoint, what's getting ready to happen that's gonna impact everyone. Not, hey, tell me what you think about what I wanna do to you, not with you.
But that's what I'm saying. That's why I think the whole process that started has been morphed into this, give me your ideas, and if I feel like it's something I care about, I'll do it. But at that time it wasn't, because the powers that be didn't want to sit at the table. The powers that be were forced to sit at the table. The powers that be were forced to do what the all said was priority. And the all participated in making sure the process happened. That's what I'm saying. Nothing like that has happened since then,
But it can't
because it was more.
But it couldn't be all if they weren't at the, so
They were at the table.
but they were forced to be there, right?
And yeah, they were forced to be there, and you know what? They were not only were forced to be there, it was one of those, if you don't buy in,
We moving without you.
yes.
Since I was on that committee, I had one comment to make, and I think Lucretia just said it, but I want to make sure. And it depends on who is at the table. You know, just because you want an African American or Latino at the table, that means nothing. It's how is that person at the table going to be representative of the people that you want to be represented at the table. Now, if you have the person at the table that's going to agree with everything you say, then that's not a person representing me. And we have too many people, too many boards with that are diverse, that don't represent the people that they're supposed to be there to represent. So you have a person at the table, but it's the wrong person at the table.
Right.
Well, and our team said something came really good from Chris. He said, you know, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Especially when you're looking at a process like community visioning or bringing change or bringing about change. You know, one of the things that I think in doing a lot of the just looking again back at Chattanooga Venture and Vision 2000 and what came from that is it was like a separate, you know, organization that was not really tied to anything, even though it kind of was tied to some of its initial funding. But it was something that helped to drive or kind of initiate some of the initiatives and great things that we have now, but somebody was kind of kept pushing, you know, bringing people together, revisioning, revising, and then when it broke apart and everything became all these individual organizations, and then the structure went back into place. The industrialized structure went back into place. Now it's this organization does this one thing kind of. This organization does this other thing that was an aspect of like our 34 like overall goals for the future or whatever. And so then we see them not making any headway because there's no, you know, impartial third party kind of that's pushing it along, that's representing a community as a whole, because nobody wants to be that person that does the bad thing or gets in trouble or
One more comment here.
Could you repeat you had a follow-up question, and that's what I was about to respond to.
Okay, and they've been responding to it, but the idea was, is there a part of all that is opposed to the collaboration? It actually wouldn't want to be part of the all.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's really across all layers and levels. So it's easy to say, oh, those folks out there in the county, they don't want to be involved. And for the people out in the county to say, oh, nobody involves us. And I think inclusion is one thing, and it's something we have to keep working for, to always include more people. But at the same time, there's a recognition that this is work. That, you know, community work is work, and we've all got to work together. And you can't be, you know, I love folk tales, and the Little Red Hen is one of my favorite ones of all time. You can't be the animals that just say, no, I don't want to help you with that, I don't want to help you with that, and then at the end of the day say, oh, I want some of your cornbread. No, it doesn't work that way. And I think that's the challenging part of inclusion. And again, you know, as a practitioner, I see it all the time with folks that it's like, this is in your interest. You need to be involved to let us know and how this needs, and it's an uphill battle. And so, you know, I think at one level,
can't just assume that everybody wants to participate.
And I think on one level, that's on us. I mean, I'm not sure to what extent y'all are practitioners that involve community engagement, but to me, if I'm not giving folks a reason to be engaged as well as an avenue to be engaged, my practice is not where it needs to be.
So I don't know how many people have seen the recent documentary about Lorraine Hansberry, but there's a scene in there where a Raisin in the Sun had just opened up in Chicago, and maybe the first night not a lot of people came. The second night the audience started to grow, and on the third night it had filled up, and the director of the play went into the lobby because he's like, I need to figure out what's going on. So he saw an elderly black woman walk into the theater, and he asked her, he said, why would you spend $4 to come see Sidney Poitier on the stage when you can watch him at the movie theater for 65 cents? Now this was the 50s. And she said, well, I heard that there was something of interest to me in this production. So I'm saying that because that's one thing that really stuck with me, and I've been thinking about it since I saw that. A lot of times we have not shown people that something is of interest to them, that they have a say in things. And I think a lot of the reason why we struggle with things like inclusion we focus on filling up rooms rather than making sure that what we're doing actually has substance. We don't, if it has substance, the word of mouth will catch on. We can go into communities and get people excited about things, versus what we see a lot, which is what you have referenced, where I come back from some conference and I have an idea of what's going to work for the poor people in Chattanooga. So I'm going to, share that with the people that I know, and then we're going to take it and impose it on folks. No, I'm just being real.
But that's a perfect entree to question 2, which is exactly what we're talking about. So how did your groups respond to the question? It was a long question, but all of you probably remember that it had to do with, based on your experience, what could your group do and how would you connect in order to make it happen? So this time we'll start with you.
I'm sorry to backtrack just a little.
Go ahead.
I didn't respond to that last question, and I want to preface it a little bit by saying I can't imagine what it's like to try to get things done in a system where there are so many hurdles and rules, in city and in government. So I don't like to vilify government entities, but at the same time in Chattanooga, I do think that there are people who have come to them in earnestness with a lot of wonderful ideas and skill sets, and I would love to see more partnerships with the city and creativity about what those could lead to. So I don't think they've been totally opposed to it necessarily, but maybe just the openness. And again, I kind of say that with the caveat of not having worked in government. So
I want to make a real quick comment,
Yes.
because I thought your question was, what opposes that being an honor? That's what I thought your question was.
It may have been.
So I'm going to respond to that.
Okay. That's a good question.
So it's because our thing is housing and affordable housing at that. I think that's the one thing that opposes there being an all, because you have relationships with people, know your neighbors, and if your neighbors are different, then therefore you have an all right there in your neighborhood. For me, it's the segregation of the neighborhood that prevents the all.
Thank you. All right.
So
Number 2.
Yeah, the problems, we had so many people who, in our group from different spheres, education and community planning and development backgrounds, that it just kept coming up, the imbalance of development interest versus community benefit and input. And that's such an enormous issue in Chattanooga right now, and we are at a crossroads with development, and what that means for affordable housing, what that means for preserving neighborhoods. That the theme that kept coming up over and over again that would create a larger conversation for solutions is going back to that, taking a pause as a city and using the resources of its citizens and of the government and of other models that have played out in cities, both what has worked and hasn't worked, and kind of assessing where we are and where we want to go. There's just a ton of development going on right now, but it wouldn't take a lot of resources to kind of freeze a few things of just being pushed through so quickly and to reassess everything. Also representation on various committees, especially the Planning Commission, and how those appointments are made. I know that they're made through elected officials, but the theme came up in our group of wanting to see representation from people in neighborhoods who are knowledgeable about this that don't necessarily have ties to current development industries in any way. So, and I'm sure there are several other committees that would apply to.
Okay.
I'll second all of that. I think there's geographic fragmentation in this community, more so than other communities I've seen. And so relevant to our discussion, kind of what we hit on was digital literacy, because it's really an area that overlaps for everybody as far as problems, and it's a huge issue, especially with the current workforce and how they're going to remain productive into the next 5, 10 years, 15 years of their working life. And of course, it's an issue for kids coming up too. And we kept coming back to, and maybe it was just me, but we kept coming back to the idea of boundary spanning, is that, you know, everybody's doing great work across the community, and I'll just pick on Unified Ed and UTC. They do great work across the community as far as engaging out in the community, but to what extent are we engaging across the community and across those neighborhoods? And particularly when we were talking about digital literacy, there are islands of digital literacy. Some areas have more technology resources, more workforce resources than other areas. Geographically, I guarantee you, if we look at it by zip code or however you want to do it, do a heat map of talent or technology resources. Matter of fact, I do this stuff. We can count up the digital devices in homes and map them out. We're going to see there's a lot of variation, to say the least, and maybe one of the best ways to enhance digital literacy is connect across those boundaries. So how do we create connections between places with a lot of technology capabilities, technology resources, into other places across the community that don't necessarily have them? And even more than the resources, it's really almost a way of thinking, because being a digital native and really being able to use technology, you think about it very differently than, you know, folks that grew up with phones that had cords on them. And then the last part of it, we were talking about, well, who's not at the table with this? And I haven't been real engaged in digital literacy, but I have been involved with the tech sector here, and I just don't see a lot of tech companies involved. I see companies like Blue Cross Blue Shield, Unum, Volkswagen, very involved in it. But as far as, you know, folks that provide technology, software developers, coders, web developers, IT services, I think there's a great need to engage them.
So we haven't yet really engaged the 21st century.
Nope, not really. It's here, it's thriving, but.
I think even like to the point of that connecting and building relationships and stuff, what we discussed at our table was the importance of making those connections, building relationships with each other and with people just outside of our own community and within our own circles. Because when we went back to the overall question of all segments of the community, breaking it down to focusing on all segments of our community, which might be our neighborhood, or something, you know, that you know, as small as our cul-de-sac, our neighborhood, our city, our county, you know, our state. You know, you get into these bigger ideas of what community is. Was that bridging those gaps and really making a concerted effort to connect people to people, especially in a world where we think that the whole digital piece is interaction and inclusion of people, you know, like, oh, just because we've all got a social media account, then we're connected. You know, how many people in this room are comfortable going to their next door neighbor because you're in the cliche movie idea of, I need a cup of sugar? Like, how many people in here would really like be comfortable going and asking a neighbor, like, hey, I'm out of sugar, I'm out of butter, like, do you know your neighbors enough to do that? I think in a lot of our community, even if you're like in an apartment complex or something, once somebody's door's shut, like, there's a very, you know, you have to be a certain type of personality, I think, especially now, to feel comfortable doing that. And somebody saying, I don't have any butter either, you know, so I don't have any sugar either. So it was really just trying to like think of ways that we could, you know, connect people, bring people in, and realizing that, you know, that is work, and that it's work that never stops. You know, even in something like this, I mean, there's nothing really that said none of us in this room couldn't invite one other person to either participate or to observe. I mean, like, the observation of things like this can be just as important as the participation. It can also lead people to participating later or having ideas. You know, each one of our tables get like either voted or we volunteered to come up here and talk. But But then there's also you guys that are out there at the tables that are still having things to say about, you know, this discussion and what's going on. Like, you don't have to just have that one voice that's up representing you, I guess.
Well, I was drafted.
Hey, you know, it happens sometimes. Sometimes that is part of the thing, right? You that's part of the process. You have to get drafted. You have to get tapped. I mean, I forgot to answer the email, and the elders had to remind me, like, "Hey, did you get this invitation?" No, I didn't get the invitation. I was like, "Oh, I did get the invitation." So yes, I will be there. But you know, that's part of the thing. And then you have to commit. Right?
All right. So we talked a lot at our table about we were looking for a common thing, because as you can talk about equity, digital equity, you can talk about housing inequities, you can talk about the overarching thing is Chattanooga not being an equitable place to live. Okay? We said one of the ways that we could address this is through, and it's one of my friends over here is gonna love this statement, but it's through no, it's through integrating schools, because we haven't done that. I don't care what is on the record. We haven't done that successfully, and we haven't done that for a lot of reasons. So the housing issues that we have are indicative in our schools. The job opportunity, workforce development is indicative. If you go all the way back, you can find the problem happening in terms of what programs were offered in certain schools, what type of educational options were provided at certain schools. And you can go back even further. I was telling James and other people at our table, you know, 4,000, we talk about this number all the time, 4,000 kids being born into Hamilton County every year. But no one wants to talk about the fact that of that 2,200 kids, 2,200 of that 4,000 will be born into poverty. And 70% of that 2,200 will stay there for the rest of their life. Those are real numbers for Chattanooga, and that's an educational inequity problem. So that was something that we all had in common, and we understood that equity was not just about throwing resources, because at the root of inequity, it's the fact that this separation is what is causing all of these cancers that we're seeing in the digital space, in the housing space, because we're not at any point growing citizens in this city to grow up side by side together. We're like this, okay, you're over here, private, public, you're over here, 37406 and 37421. And when you come down to 37402, I need everybody to play together in a common space that we're gonna build for you that's beautiful. And so come and be nice. And what ends up happening is we've been conditioned to be separate in this city. We've been conditioned in all of these other arenas to be separate. And so, faith-based statement here, even a child shall lead them. I think we need to let the children lead us, and Hamilton County Schools is one of the places in this country where integration is still possible, because white flight, contrary to popular belief, white flight actually hasn't happened in drastic numbers in our school district. There's still white people to integrate with the Latino, Hispanic population, and the African American populations that are present. So we could actually integrate our schools if we wanted to, but that would also cause us to have to look at all these gerrymandered political districts. It's gonna cause us to look at these red line, or in Chattanooga, the orange line, housing. These housing districts, we're gonna have to start looking at all these other things if we change it. That's a one-shot domino, that if we change these schools, which is still possible, it will have a dramatic impact on our city.
And LaQuisha, I have to add to your point, we went from gerrymandering our neighborhoods to gerrymandering our schools. Because when the districts were drawn, it was drawn to keep poverty and to keep separation. Because how is it, I live in Alton Park, 37410, that students in that school have to go to 37404 to attend classes when they have schools right in their communities. So we could not solve it just with the housing, so we solved it with the schools. We created more division. Yeah.
But I'm just thinking they still, and I think those two have to come together.
Exactly.
Way,
They do.
Because
They do.
The parents and the families have to have an affordable
Yes.
place to
Yeah.
live,
Sure.
to send their children to the school.
I sure wish they'd do some housing investment other than in North Chattanooga.
But
That's the point.
But the
is
thing
we
about
need it
that
more
is-
equitable.
So
across the
to
board.
your point, Cora, the thing about, so Cora's talking about affordable housing. Like, I'm gonna make this like so overly simplified, not to anyone's insult, but like at the root, like I get to my childhood, LaQuisha, when I start trying to figure out things that we think are complex. But like the reality is that, okay, why is affordable housing, one, why is it a thing?
Yep.
And why does it only have to exist in this form?
Yeah.
The thing about North Chattanooga is, so North Chattanooga got a school
Yep.
that all types of,
It's a magnet, literally.
it had nothing to do with the magnet. It had to do with the politics
Right.
that dealt with getting it to become a magnet. Because
Right.
I've never seen a school
Right.
in the same school district close down and open up the next year under the same umbrella, but with a totally different demographic
Yeah.
and and I was in the district, so I'm
Yeah.
saying this
And
from a
kind
front
of-
row seat. So the thing about the housing though is, the housing went up.
Right.
The housing went up,
Yeah.
the school quality went up.
And the poor people were kicked out of the
And,
schools.
but this is the question, to Cora's point, part of it was, okay, where the housing development on the backside of Spears, up the hill, Spears Avenue, stuff started closing down because North Chattanooga is no longer affordable. But the question is, who says that affordable has to exist over here? Why can't there be
Right.
pockets of
Right.
affordable everywhere? Because then the school is not the only thing that's driving it, but we use schools to open up doors to start the housing.
Right.
And it's gentrification. I'm not even gonna water it down.
Yeah.
We're starting, we're gonna say, okay, we need a better school. We're gonna start with this school. And so all of a sudden, affordable housing is no longer available because of this massive development. But the reality is that affordable housing should be everywhere.
I'm not speaking of unaffordable housing.
Yeah.
I think some affordable housing is really unaffordable housing.
Yeah.
We're not speaking of unaffordable housing, unaffordable rent. We're talking affordable home ownership.
Yeah.
That's a different thing.
Then rent.
Right.
Then rent.
Right.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, Ms. Cora. We're actually saying the same thing. Like I'm saying, but the thing about affordable housing, who's defining it and how they're defining it, they're making a difference between what you and I are saying, and it's not a difference.
I'm not saying what they're saying.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying what they're saying.
Right.
I'm saying but it shouldn't be defined in a certain area, and there should be homes in every community in our city that are affordable home ownership, not just in this area. That's all it's like. That's what I mean by affordable home. I'm not talking about renting. I'm saying, and so we're using, what's happening is the language is getting twisted by semantics. So what you and I are calling affordable housing, we can have a conversation 2 or 3 blocks over with somebody else, and they'll use the word affordable housing, but they're not talking about what we're talking about. Same thing with diversity and inclusion. People use diversity, inclusion, equity all the time, but the reality is that you're inviting me to the table, you're not asking me to dance. You're inviting me to your party, but you really didn't want my, so you're using the term, and people are getting misconceptions. The reality is that even though you said affordable housing, people can't afford to live in nice homes that they own.
I'm talking
Even though
about
you're
the
calling it
home
diversity.
ownership where the home owner is paying about what the renter is paying, but except the money is not going out the window.
It's going to you to own a home.
But not just that, because the electric bill that they're paying is as high as their house note or
Yes,
their
ma'am.
rent. So I'm talking about the affordable home where the person is paying a house note, but they also have a place that they could have, the amount that they could, $800, whatever, is for rent. They could pay that for a home.
Yes, ma'am.
Or less.
Yes, ma'am.
For home ownership, a 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom home.
I really hate to interrupt.
I'm sorry.
No, you're not. You're doing exactly what we want, except that we're going to run out of time to do what we want, and we need to focus to be. But now I'm going to be selfish and say I cannot resist supporting a point you made with a national study that was reported not long ago about integration. Our national achievement level went up as long as we were having integration in place. And as soon as the law was passed that stopped busing and forced integration, from that day to this day, our achievement level nationally has been coming down. So if we want better education, integrated communities create that.
And busing has existed in this country for over 100 years.
Sure.
It only became a problem when it was used as a tool for integration. Nobody cared about busing. Leave It to Beaver rode a bus to school. Nobody cared about busing until buses were used for integration. And now busing, the term, I want us to get into this terminology. It's a bad word, but it was never a bad word. People rode buses to schools forever.
Single parent homes wasn't a bad word.
Okay, let's move on to who's going to speak from his heart again, I'm sure.
There's so much I want to say. I want to reiterate the point that, that I'm saying this as a neighborhood leader in Orchard Knob. There is not a neighborhood that has some God-given right to keep working class housing out of their neighborhood totally. If we don't create inclusive communities and if neighborhood leaders don't jump up and become a part of that voice, then we're going to keep reiterating the same cause. We talked a lot about what are the issues that we can all get around. A home for every family is one that every one of us at the table can get around. But another issue is that often doesn't get talked a lot about with all the investment and industry that's coming into Chattanooga, the real estate development. We don't talk about wages. We don't talk about for working class folks what this economy does. Tennessee has a poverty economy. We have the highest percentage of minimum wage workers of any state in the country. And even among that, Chattanooga is an outlier. Forbes came out with a study in 2014 that said that Chattanooga had the lowest pay, 7th lowest pay in the country for someone with a bachelor's degree. We're not even talking about just working class jobs. And so that issue and the issue of the economy bleeds into everything. Everything's connected. The schools are connected to the housing, to the economy. But like one of the person at our table said, the greatest division isn't just black and white, it's green. And we have to have a way to fix that. And so we talked a lot about what hats we wear as individuals at the table and how we could act, all right? Found out that two people at the table are on First Tennessee's Community Reinvestment Advisory Board. And the question of how those resources get used, where they get funneled to, and who it goes to, that's of major importance. And can we work together on that? Two folks are community leaders in the neighborhoods here. And how do you develop a clear and concise program within the community in order to support radical inclusivity, in order to support integrated neighborhoods? How do you do that? And is it something we can work on together? I think it is.
So our community, or our little group here was talking about, we went from the things that frustrate and you feel disempowered to address to something very specific. And Cora was chatting about some of the soul food restaurants on Dodson Avenue that run right through her community. And she kicked off the conversation with a real asset that's already there. And we just looked around the table and said, you know, we actually, sitting at this table, have the capacity to address like issues of segregation through how we could help facilitate a soul food avenue in this community. Something that's like very straightforward. Tim and Tia sounds like a TV show. Tim and Tia both do work with small business and entrepreneurship. Cora lives in that community. I kind of helped start a restaurant last year, so we kind of had this discussion around how could we do a thing that actually helps this specific area in an honoring way that's leveraging people who live there for the benefit of people who live there, and also kind of crosses some boundaries. I've always been a big believer in food. I'm biracial, so it's like one side of the family's eating this crazy stuff, the other side's eating the other crazy stuff, and seeing that kind of as a way to create intersectionality and public benefits. And then the other thing we started to chat about, of course, was affordable housing, and Ms. Cora's been doing some work on how does Voice Station as a community, and how do they as a community support individuals in owning homes, which is such important work, because I live in Highland Park, and on the back side of that is where we are. Where people are, a lot of people just understand Highland Park to be the new South Side, and when they say the new South Side, they're not talking about the great community, they're talking about the great property values. And we have this challenge of how do we create a narrative that says the most important thing that you can invest in your community is your community? Like, let that settle in. and forget that you get a return on your home at all. Because the reality is, owning a home is always owning an asset. The market fluctuates, it changes. In a horrible market, your home is still worth something, and you have a place to live. And we've been having that ongoing challenge of, what happens in this kind of environment? How do we use better tools to create affordability and home ownership over the long term? Because if we don't address that, the challenge of how do we keep some level of inclusivity will always be a challenge. I mean, people are going to profit take as much as they can.
I'm sure a lot of you read that article, Lopsided Chattanooga, and I have been hearing a lot of concerns in the various neighborhoods, especially the Area 3 neighborhood where we are now doing area planning, going through the area planning process, is the number of whites that are being attracted to Chattanooga versus the number of other groups, and how Chattanooga appears to be changing to meet the needs of the people who are coming into Chattanooga, rather than the people who already exist here, to the point of gentrification, what was used a few minutes ago. And this is a real concern of people living in a lot of these inner city, I call them inner city neighborhoods. It's like, what's going to happen to us? The word is rental. Everything is rental. They're not talking about home ownership and how you keep your home, how you can get homes. And there was a program, a gentleman gave a presentation with NACA, I think that's the name, that's the acronym for it, that I thought was fabulous. And I hope he comes back, and I hope if he does, you go and hear him. Because he spoke the language of especially African Americans on home ownership. Not looking at credit scores and mortgages and all that kind of stuff that other people frighten people with, to the point that they don't buy and try to attempt to become homeowners. And I feel that C&E, which is a player in Chattanooga, might need a little competition. And maybe NACA needs to come in here and provide that. Because there's a way that people can own homes and not have to jump through all these loops and hoops that the city and other people are asking them to do. And I think that's the word, that's the image that should go out. People are really being silenced with all this pressure and all this information coming in about rental, and you're going to be displaced, and we're going to put these condominiums, it's going to look like downtown, and you're like, well, what's going to happen to us? And I was in a meeting yesterday, and very few people spoke. And they were the community leaders. And they kept asking, they wanted me to shut up and Corey to shut up. But they weren't saying anything. And it's like they were listening. And at the end, this woman came up and hugged me and said, thank you. And she's the president of a neighborhood association. So, people are intentionally or unintentionally, whatever, being silenced.
I have a question in terms of, living in a low income community. The problem I see is, we talk about home ownership, but my question is, how do you reclaim the property that no longer is owned by the individuals or people that support the community? Because most of my community is zoned R2, R3. It's mostly rental. And so because of the housing bubble, when it burst, a lot of the foreclosed homes were bought out by people that did not live in the community, even our commercial property. People that not only didn't live in the community, the people didn't live in the state.
There you go.
And so there's no way that people can't, even small businesses can't go into the neighborhood. People can't buy their homes. And a lot of the people that own the homes that may be dying off, that could have a home to pass down, because of the employment issue, their children can't take over and maintain that. So more so than even a process of stopping, we got gentrification, but we can't even reclaim our neighborhood anymore. We can't even create affordable home ownership.
Well, price of the lots that are going, the vacant lots that are going for taxes.
Mhm.
The city is pooling those.
Yes.
And that's what they're talking about is developing rentals.
Yes.
And that's a lot
Yeah,
of property,
they are.
especially
They
there.
really are.
So
So,
pushing for that.
Yeah,
The city's pushing for all those rentals.
Rentals.
That's why it's so important for us in voice to make our own move for home ownership. And what we've been able to do is find a builder who can build a home,
Yes.
an affordable home, $600, $700, $700 a month, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, for a family to move into an affordable home. And the process is to stop the big developers from coming in, building the bigger homes. We don't mind big homes, but we're not looking to gentrify to that's all there is. They're available for people. So when we've gotten several lots donated, he was able to buy a few lots at low cost. So we're looking to build homes on there, and we've already started to, the first young lady that's got the home, she's our point person. She already knows the process to go through to get your credit score up, to work through the process of the home ownership program, education. She was at the NACA conference, so she's real, learning on all that, so she'll be able to take any person through that process. She says she's already identified some school teachers that want to move into our neighborhood, so to be able to afford a home, because people, there's this difference in the amount of income. Okay, I understand that. But a lot of people would like to have an affordable, real affordable home.
right.
Yeah.
And but what?
And I
so,
saw that article.
So what Cora and the team that they built? I mean, because it was an empowering thing to hear. I don't know how many of y'all read that Sunday article about what that neighborhood is getting ready for, because they have no idea what Cora Lanier at the helm was getting ready to happen. But the thing that I was empowered by, I was also saddened by, because you have to create a coalition to usurp the institutions.
Yeah.
Like they had to create a coalition. So to both Dr. Holmes and Ms. Cora's credit, they had to learn all of this stuff. Some of it was lived experience, some of it was stuff that they had to research. They had to figure out, okay, who all we need at this table, and then they had to find the right candidate to be the person that would be, kind of the person to walk through this. They had to find a builder, because there's all of this, as a person who's in real estate investment outside of this city for a lot of reasons, but to know the language, to know the quote unquote game of what it looks like to get their points advocated for or fought for from a development side, and then having Dr. Rayburg to get the research to be able to back the stances that they're making, so that not only we're doing this for one person, they're setting up a community infrastructure of communication sharing, so that this can be replicated over and over.
Yeah, and I think to her point about the data, we had to collect the data, and Dr. Rayburg is a data queen.
Yes, ma'am.
She's able to get all the mapping, everything that's in our neighborhood, so we know every lot, every plot, every owner, everyone who's out of town. And I talked to some of them on the phone, so we know exactly what's there.
Why do I feel like I'm interrupting the most important conversation I've ever heard in Chattanooga? I hate to do that. We are limited times, but I know there are two additional comments.
Yes.
We'll have yours, and then
Okay.
Perry, and then I'll ask a final question, and then if any of you have to leave, please feel free to do so, but we'll wind up now. And all of this is being recorded visually and auditorily, so we will not lose these wonderful thoughts.
Yeah. Chris actually said what I was actually about to say, but we cannot make impact without contact. And with that being said, I really believe that everything we have is already in this room. We just have to stop having conversation and put a plan in place to actually do something. There has been conversation for years, but there has not been a follow-through and a follow-up on what's supposed to take place. But I really believe that in this room are the people who are like-minded to see a better Chattanooga. And with that said, what is the follow-up plan now that we can collectively come together and we can take different parts of Chattanooga so we all do something in segments that we can bring to the table to make Chattanooga a better place for all of us.
Well, and I'd like to say that there are a number of us that will be happy to facilitate that plan as opposed to just having more talk.
What I was kind of advising when we're planning this is getting everybody's email address and just sharing with the group this group of email, and you guys could do with it what you want. Connect how you want, don't connect how you want. But, these are new relationships that are forged. Maybe there's new parts of the web that are created today, and y'all can do what you want with it. But maybe we can just share the emails, and y'all can do what you want with that.
Yeah, just 2 comments. One, I think that in some of our discussions, I think one of the things that it's great to be in an area where it's growing and it's changing, and there's a lot of good things happening with that. But there's also if we're not looking at that and we're not helping to manage that, I'm saying everybody helping to manage that, then what's going to happen is that we're always going to be sort of sucked down this road with what's going on versus maybe help steering some of that. And one of the things that when you look at cities, it's great to have things going on, but when you look at other environments, even though they're much larger, what's going on is, and we talk about right now affordable housing, but we've got another issue is a lot of the people who want to come here and move here, once they get into the rentals, once they get into they can't afford to get the money to buy housing, even if they can find the housing to do what they. So we're building a lot of places for people to live. They may not be totally involved with their communities where they're living. They're moving around looking for cheaper rents and other things of that nature. And I think the real question is, what is the development plan? What is that plan? And so if you're building 500 units somewhere, what is the plan? How is that going to impact? And we hope that there's someone out there looking at that. But I think in some cases, what we ask that question. Sometimes we don't get an answer. That's right. So I think the real thing for us is what is the plan, and also I'm working on committees, whether it be councils, whatever. The thing about it is, someone said we've got to have real work for people to do. That's the only way they're going to stay with those councils versus just coming to meetings to hear what's going on. And I think, so how do we find out what's going on, hear what's going on, and be involved with what's going on? Because I think right now there's a lot of things on the track, and we're just on along for the ride.
I mean, I think the development is important, but responsible development is more important. And in the past, I mean, I grew up my whole life here, and I'm a really young guy, so some of my experience is more contemporary, I guess, with what's going on. But we had some organizations in the past that really focused on planned community development, and then they kind of went away too. I mean, a lot of the work that Stroud Watson did, and we still have some legacy kind of organizations, but their hands are so tied as to what they're able to do now. Is that I think we need to look at how we can influence our decision makers or people that we have in office for directed policy to change some of that development. And we've seen some of that happening in very small amounts. There seems to be a discussion coming up now about responsible development practices because of some of the poor development practices that have been happening in different neighborhoods around the city. And I think that is a small start to look at some of that. I mean, gentrification is going to happen, but if it is directed a little bit better than just let to go rampant,
even just where we invest in the neighborhoods, because there are great neighborhoods in this community that don't get any investment, and yet North Chattanooga is getting way too much investment. And I think we're just relying on the usual suspects or the market to direct those investments rather than saying, hey, how do we get more investment over in East Lake or in East Ridge or up in Saudi Daisy, rather than North Chattanooga, the south side. We're missing an opportunity.
So I'm going to be very, very diplomatic with what I say.
As a city employee.
But when I tell you that there is so much power in this room, and one thing that I've learned in working in city government for 5 years is if one person calls, if two call, if 3 or 4 or 5, if 20 people call, if people come, it's like they say, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So about a week ago, our mayor announced $1 million housing trust fund, correct? So somebody at City Hall is working on what that's gonna look like.
And they
I
probably
will
need
tell you
help.
that it's not me. But now is the time, if you wanted to include Ms. Cora's model in some way, the Glenwood model, Maria, what you were talking about, now is the time to make known what areas and neighborhoods need to be prioritized. Now is even the time to say, you know, $1 million is not enough. If you feel like it's not enough. But you, as influential people in our city and citizens, you can, this is where you can come together, have one voice, and impact policy that's happening right now. Versus what usually happens is something, like I said, something's imposed, or we find out about it at the end, and then we have to, you know, scuffle and shuffle to try to make changes. So I would really encourage people to reach out to people in City Hall, you know, if they don't answer or don't respond, you can reach to me. I can track them down, and I've done this for people sitting up here before. You know, I'm not the most influential, but I'm probably one of the most persistent. And I know that the time that I have at City Hall is limited, so we need to do big things. And I want to live in a city 3 years, 4 years from now, after I leave city government, where I can still afford to live, where my nieces and nephews can afford to live. So the time is now, and if these big things are happening and big decisions are being made, be part of them and be persistent about being part of them.
You know, the question you asked and the answer he just gave is the concern a lot of people have because of the lack of transparency. The city, as far as development, they either already have a development plan or they're developing it now. And the rest of the people know nothing about it. And so that's the reason why at Area 3 meeting yesterday, I told them, you need to get your neighborhood plans together. You need to know what your neighborhood's desires are and what they don't want in the neighborhood and what they want in the neighborhood. Because if you don't have a plan, the city's got one for you. And I said that in every meeting, and it's important.
And I would point out that, because I do a lot of my practice is in smart city, that Chattanooga prides itself on being a smart city, and a key element of smart cities is transparency. Having data, opening it up for everybody to use as they need to. So, yes, very much so.
Joan?
Okay, I just want to say, and this might be, I don't know, this might replace your last question, I don't know.
That's the
Okay.
key.
My question is.
This is, and you can just answer yes or no actually to this. So when I interviewed the mayor at the end of the Lost Way series and I asked him, do you think the city needs a new vision? Do you think that the community wants it? Do you want it? Are you even interested in it? He said, yes, I would be behind it if that's what the community wanted. And so what I hear when I'm out and about reporting, what I've heard from you guys, is something akin to, there's a plan in motion. We don't know if we're a part of that. We don't know who's contributing to that. So my question is, do we need a new vision? Do we need a new vision process? Now that's a loaded question in some ways because we know the history. Or do we need to reinvent it? I mean, it's a question I want to leave you with to think about as leaders, but if you can answer it to me, if you want to just pop by afterwards and tell me your thoughts on it, but how many of you would say yes to that? Just raise your hand.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I'm not necessarily gonna say yes or no to it, but I'm gonna jump on what she said. There's already visions being created,
Right.
Yep.
and they're not going to be transparent.
Right.
And so the communities and the people that have knowledge and or resources that want to work with communities of need, and that's most communities that are not North Chattanooga, you said, but and some others, they need to come up with their own plan, and they need to start promoting and pushing and advocating and fighting and clawing and getting knowledge and research and creating the plan, because there is already some big plans already being made right now that are going to control the destiny of this community. And it is not going to happen regardless of whether you're in
Maybe
a
what I
vision
should
process
rebate
or
is,
not.
do we need a community-based planning process to be in the works now as other planning processes are taking place? That's just, because some communities do have them, We've had it in the past. It's just a question I want to leave y'all with.
Well, I mean, I think the element of the community visioning thing had, the element that it had, whether it was the visioning process or whatever, was there was someone there kind of helping tell people about the stuff that was going on. And we don't have kind of a group or an organization, like we have to rely on trying to be like, hey, what do you have going on? Hey, and what do you have going on? And what do you have going on? Where there was somebody that was kind of keeping a track of that and saying, hey, there's this stuff going on and we need, some people there to know about it and give an opinion. And I think that's where we're lost right now. We don't really have that.
Can I just bring one thing up real quickly? I think I'm staring here looking at Helen. And I think Helen is such the work that you do with ATM in so many respects articulates one of our city's fundamental problems. Like, this woman's brilliant, first of all. I don't care if you love her or hate her, she's brilliant. She does the hard intellectual work to make policy recommendations. Hard intellectual work. These are intentional words that I'm using because the average person in this city doesn't have the time to put in the hard work, and they don't have the knowledge to be intellectually engaged. She's like a magical translator gift to our city. And a lot of people in this room I know do that magical translation work as well. The challenge in a city like Chattanooga is having that, to get public input and to get community vision, is to have the people like the Helens and the Jameses and the Everly, the people that I know in this room who are doing a lot of that work and giving avenues for people to create vision, because we're daydreaming right now. And we need to get out of the daydream, and we need to create vision that a city government and other civic organizations and nonprofits and individuals can actually put into action.
And be accountable.
And be very accountable for. There should be expectation. We should be able to ask the question, what did you say you were going to do, and what did you do, and why are you getting funded again?
Yeah.
Why aren't you fired? We're scared to ask that question. And the number of, my background is Fortune 100 management consulting, so maybe I'm used to when you do not follow the rules, you get fired. When you do not produce, you get demoted. I'm into that. But I really feel challenged when I work with people in this community who are responsible for accomplishing objectives, and worse than that, they're being paid by our funds through whatever means to accomplish those objectives, and they're not accomplishing them.
I'm hearing,
Doing it in the dark.
I'm hearing for everybody say, talk about the need for collaborative action. I'm not hearing a plan. I'm hearing a lot of talk. We need to do something.
No next steps.
The history, I'm not native Chattanoogan. I've been here 13 years. But I'm gonna talk about education very quickly, right? So I got here in 2004, and there was an education initiative. There was a group twice this size of all the major players. And the goal was to, get education moving in a place where we can say something to the effect of third graders are reading on task by 2020. And yeah, they moved that date around 2016. But 2020, that was the goal for the ED initiative. What got birthed out of that was Read 20. Okay, I don't know what happened. ED initiative was no more initiative, it went away, right? So we got a new mayor, fast forward. Then we said, okay, we realized that in order to get kids to read, that we have to create this system where they're ready from birth to post collegiate, actually. So all these people are at the table. So now this was ready by 21. We're gonna be ready by 21. All right, everybody's gonna be ready to do something by 21. And a whole group of people came together, and here we are. And then it fizzled. But that's okay, because we're gonna make a promise. And we brought Jeffrey Canada down, and we're gonna target these areas that are the most vulnerable. This is just education. That are just the most vulnerable, and we're going to do the Chattanooga Promise Zone. And we don't care if we get the money or not. It's what's right for kids. You can find it in the newspaper. We said that. And the promise never happened. It's okay though. We're gonna rally everybody again, and now we 2.0. And it's not about places. It's about people, and it's centered around education, and we brought people together. And so, to 2.0's credit, this is the furthest I've seen a movement go that actually, they hired a staff, they have, you know, their buildings. And so, I am ridiculously optimistic about 2.0, but I think we cannot afford to get together for a plan, because what happens in Chattanooga in a plan, it becomes a big room of people, and then it may fizzle in the middle of it because something else pops up. So I think we have enough data. We have researched every corner, every trend in this area. We need everything that we need, we have, except for foot action. And we got to get out there and get behind people like Cora, get behind people like Dr. Holmes, who they're in the neighborhoods doing the work. How can we align our resources to make sure that the people who need whatever the need is can get the need met by the things that we say we offer?
Okay, I'll drop the word plan because I believe you're right.
Plan something.
But I will not drop the two words that I said before that, collaborative action.
Yeah.
I'm with collaborative action. Intentional collaborative action.
Intentional.
I mean, I'm just so inspired by hearing all the people in this room and the people at my table, and there's just, echoing everyone else, there's so much power here and so much knowledge. And so as far as action is concerned, who wants to run for office next? I know that's a very good thing, but I'm not even talking necessarily, you know, mayor, but hey, if you're inspired for mayor, why not? I mean, 3 years from now, or 2 years from now. But city council positions and representation, to work systemically to change things, and question also the structure of our city government. What about a city manager? Right now, you know, I hear a lot of questions about transparency, and I'm not the expert on that, but I know that there are other styles of city government, so that could be implemented here. And if you have questions about that, I think Helen Burns-Sharp knows a lot about that. And what it would mean to have a city manager structure here in Chattanooga versus the one that we currently have.
We are now 30 minutes beyond our terminal point. I'm not going to allow myself to let you go any further. So if you all want to terminate and talk about it for the rest of the afternoon, I don't think there's another thing scheduled here. But you do have a third, and I will let you say something, Joan. There is a third assignment that will be handed out, and it's just two things. One, what did you learn tonight that's of great importance to you? And two, what questions do you still leave here with that need to be answered? And if you'll put give that your best thought on the sheet that's being handed out, then I appreciate that very much. Joan, you have...
The only thing left to action-oriented is, contact me when you are interacting with groups that feel disenfranchised and unheard. A great place to go is the paper. Now, I like to say that we always get everything right. There are people in this room who know that I've had to apologize about corrections from time to time. But we really try to get things right, and we really want to make sure all the voices are heard on this. And y'all have those connections to make that possible. So, and stories that are in the paper, they are read by leaders. They may not be read by people in the city, but leaders read them. And they motivate them to think about things and change. So that is still true, thankfully. So, and I appreciate y'all being here.
Okay, just a minute. All of this, the information you're putting on paper and the visuals that are coming, that are being camera, that are being, what do you call that? Video recorded, yes. All the information that's being video recorded will be put onto a YouTube, which will be available to you. So you will all receive a final report. It includes all of your comments and the video and so forth. Thank you for coming. Appreciate your input. Have a good day.